Hey folks, walk with me. A few days ago, I put out a video that was about going from homeless to homeowner in 10 years, and I talked about what that was like for me, how it happened, and I got some nice messages from it. Seemed to be meaningful to some folks, which was all that I had hoped to get out of it. All that I ever hoped to get out of any of these things, actually. But so it had me thinking, are there other things that maybe fit similar criteria that I could put on this playlist as well? And one thing that stood out was credit score. So here in the US, the credit score is like, the thing that you have in order to get, better offers for credit cards, for loans, to be able to buy a house, um, sometimes to be able to like lease a car or whatever. And in 2012, just as I was trying to get myself housed, I I had immense fear at what my credit score was because I had had some credit card debt when I ended up on the street, and obviously I had to stop paying. I wrote some letters to the companies trying to, see what could be done. Um, and, ultimately, I ended up with a credit score of like 400 or something, 450, something like that. And the only reason I found out was because I was putting in this application for this apartment in New York, and the guy was like, "What's the deal with your with your credit score?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know." I wasn't gonna give him my whole life story. He was just like some apartment broker, and ultimately he was like, "Well, I do have a building where the landlord is more discreet. So if your areas of income or your credit score, things like that, are sort of uncertain and would seem risky to other landlords, I have one who is accepting of those." So I don't know if this guy thought that I was like a drug dealer or something, but yeah, he very much got on board with this idea of like, oh, you have an alternative lifestyle, and you have an atrocious credit score and very uncertain income. So anyway, I ended up getting that apartment, and I thought, I don't know how many times I can roll the dice on this and hope that when I want to move, or if I have to move, or whatever, that I can get another apartment. Um, right? The weight of the world and like fear of that comes down really quickly when you're like, oh my God, I like just snuck by and got this apartment by the skin of my teeth after years of like sleeping on the street slash on people's couches. Um, and I don't know that I could sort of get lucky like this again. I mean, in a way, it's a weird way to get lucky, but it's getting lucky. Oh God, what is this? Some like tree being ground up or something? Um, but I was like, I gotta do something about this. So there's credit cards that I was able to like get with this atrocious credit score, um, that were like, I can't remember what they're called, secured or unsecured. I assume unsecured, or sorry, I assume secured credit cards, but I could be wrong. But if you look those up, you'll see the difference, and one will be apparently like more accessible for people with really bad credit. Oh yeah, tree being ground up, so that should be really pleasurable for your listening experience. But um, so I got a couple of these credit cards, and I tried to just be very diligent about it. Definitely did not charge beyond what I could pay, and in a really weird way, in a really sort of sad way ish, I don't know how to put it, but I was really, in a way, incapable of overspending because I had just come from years and years and years of, like I said, couch and street sleeping. And so I was just always cash in hand or debit card. And very rarely debit card. Debit card for stuff that like had to be purchased online. Alright, I'm a little bit past where the tree craziness is happening, so I'll splice this together. But I was just saying, I was really attuned to not spending money I didn't have because I had no access to money I didn't have. And that actually, in a weird way, served me well when I was trying to get these credit cards that had, they all had fees, right? Because, because you have terrible credit. And so they're like, yeah, you want a credit card? We'll give you, I think I had, like my first card was maybe like a $500, maybe $750 limit. Something like that. And there was, an annual fee. That was like 10% or more of the limit. And they charge it like immediately to the card. So in any case, it was what I could get. And I was like, I need to start with this and try. And so I just kind of stayed on that path. Don't spend money I don't have, even though I sort of could have at that point, but it was such a small amount also that's kind of helpful. I couldn't like go out and buy anything expensive. And so I did this for, probably a couple of years. And I had a spreadsheet and everything, so I made sure I didn't miss a payment. I was just very diligent about it. And then I started checking my credit score and saw my credit score improving because they were tracking these cards and these payments that were being made. And old stuff that had gotten problematic when I ended up on the streets, that enough time started to pass that was getting cleared up and was having less of an impact. And the new stuff that I was charging and paying off on time was having more of an impact. And so this sort of like shift started to occur. And I was actually kind of surprised. Maybe this is one of the most helpful things about this, at least at that time. I mean, this was over 10 years ago by now, but at least at that time, I was actually pretty surprised how quickly that score could start rising. And then, at some point you sort of hit a little bit of a ceiling. I'm sure not technically with whatever the equation is that they're using. But at some point you sort of hit a little bit of a ceiling or things slow down because you do have all of this bad history, right? So your good history sort of slowly overcomes it. But there are periods where it does seem to sort of like swoop up. In any case, once my score started to get like into the 600s, I found that I could get approved for like an actual credit card, not these like really fake-ish kind of things, these really sketchy things. And so I got a real credit card, started making use of that, and it was like a Capital One something, and just tried to be really good about doing the exact same thing, the exact same way. And then, ultimately I closed those other cards, which, dings your score a little bit, but it did make sense to me to keep paying a membership fee to this card that I had because I couldn't get any other cards. At some point you got to trade off a little bit of like, this isn't like my score going down because I'm delinquent and so on and so forth. This is my score going down because I'm closing a card that I just don't need to have anymore. So I felt comfortable with that. And I'm sure there's plenty of videos and tutorials and whatever out there that have a much more concrete system for doing this. This was me cobbling it together, and this is like what happened. But then I just sort of continued on that same way with like the Capital One card, and then I got offered another. And so I built up a little bit of like credit card diversity, if you will, and just made sure that like I did not run the risk of charging things that I couldn't pay off. I understand if emergencies come along, and sometimes that happens. Luckily, that had not happened to me at that point. And through the years then, some cards got closed because of inactivity, right? I had cards that would have like $15,000 limits and whatever else, and I just never used them because I got used to the cards. I was like, oh, okay, these are the few cards that give me the best sort of rewards, and then I don't have to remember to pay a million different cards, right? If I can remember to pay 2 or 3 cards a month, cool. Gives me some diversity in case something gets lost or stolen or closed or whatever. But it doesn't, I feel like they want you to have like 12 different credit cards, and it just feels really unnecessary and prone to like miss a payment to me. But that's basically what I did. And then just by continuing on that path, I was able to get my score. Now it's up over 800 usually. Of course that fluctuates here and there. If there's like a big charge in there and they're like, oh, your credit card utilization went up, da-da-da-da-da-da. Like even if you pay it off, like that period of time where you like charge the thing and you haven't paid it off yet, well, whatever. So yeah, I went from 4 to 450, something like that, in like 2012 to probably by, I don't know, 7 years later, I was, if not in the 800s, very close, and now am well over 800 typically. So again, if this is inspiring to anyone, there's not really a formula here to follow. I mean, I told you how it worked out for me, but I wasn't following a game plan. I was just sort of like, I think that these are the right things to do, and I'm going to try my best to avoid what I think are the wrong things to do, and see what happens. So, all right, folks. I know this was like a lot of background noise and stuff, but I'm sort of cramped for time lately, and I didn't know that there was this tree thing happening, so doing my best here. But I'll talk in a video soon about why time is a little cramped lately. I'm sure it'll come up sooner than later. But in any case, if you watched along this far or walked with me, I really appreciate it. And as always, I will see you in the next video.